we've spent several years now getting to the bottom of this, and we know just how it works. There are 15 cheating techniques. 14 of them are the on-the-ground ways you know about. And they're very sophisticated people. And they study each county, and they say, based on its laws and practices, we're going to choose method B, E, and K. But so they cheat as much as they can in these different on-the-ground ways you've been hearing about for 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
But then on election night at 7:01 p.m. when the polls close in whatever precinct or whatever county, they're coming on from Serbia, and there's an office from Serbia that comes into a back door on these machines. Do you mind if I take a moment to explain how they work?
Please do. We've been talking about this for years. I want to hear it.
I won't geek out too much on it. But they create your computer. You might remember it has a hard drive and it has RAM, and RAM is it's random access memory, and it just means it's not recording it on a physical medium other than. And anyway, they create in that RAM what's called a virtual machine, a ghost machine in the machine. I think we agreed when we discussed a ghost.
I thought it was just a ghost in the machine, but you said no, it was
It's a ghost machine in the machine.
Uh-huh.
So it's like a second machine that's in that machine called a virtual machine. It's a technology that's been around a couple of decades. And from that ghost machine from Serbia, they access the hard drive, change everything they want, including the images, and then it disappears, and there's almost no record whatsoever. It was there, and they close the connection. That's why they have fought so hard against people getting to inspect the hard drives, because you can find it if you know what you're looking for, and you can find the connectivity that they were connected to from Canada or something. So we know just how they did it and what happened on Election Day, November 5th, 2020. And I can tell you that Kamala Harris was completely confident of winning. She was in a business.
You mean 24?
2024. I'm sorry, did I say 2020?
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
She was in a business, a bank. I'll go ahead and say it now.
Mm-hmm.
A bank with her transition team talking about opening up banking accounts for the transition. She was in the bank and talking to some people, and it was very inappropriate. I got word of it within hours. I got word of it that, first of all, her transition team were all Obama retreads.
Uh-huh.
Second, it was a whole Obama.
She's just his puppet.
Yeah, and Susan Rice's puppet.
Okay, yeah.
And so Obama retreads, and secondly, they were 100% confident. It was described to me as, Patrick, it's very inappropriate. They're smirking. They're sitting here telling us, it doesn't, don't believe anything you read in the press, don't believe the polls, this election's in the bag. We were 100% confident and smirking about it. So they thought they were going to win, which is why on election night, she didn't have a concession speech. She had no...
I remember that.
Remember?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
She wrote it. It was actually the only speech she gave that she sounded like a
Yeah, but it took
human to
like
me.
12 hours to
24.
late. Yeah.
It took her 24 hours to do it.
Yeah.
And that's why they've been
Hillary didn't have one either in 16.
Right. They've been off script. They've been off script since November 6th. They did not have any script for this. They had no expectation of it. They thought it was completely in the bag. So the question is, what happened?
Yeah, what did happen?
What happened is that Serbian office, which incidentally is staffed by military intelligence from Serbia and China. Serbia is a Western satellite of China.
Yeah.
It's staffed by military intelligence. They're at the end of the day, they can jam any result. They got neutralized. And the story of how it got neutralized is something that's going to come out in time when the proper authorities wanted to. But they got neutralized for that day, is what happened.
Just before the election? I mean, just before they could change the votes? It got neutralized?
Yeah, 24 hours before.
Can you tell me what neutralize means? I don't want to get in trouble.
I don't want to get into it here. The story will be for other people to break. But there are some real heroes, American heroes, who did their job, and they neutralized that operation. And that was the final resort for the cheaters was that. So that's why they didn't have to push too hard in the U.S., because they always expected to come through in the end from Serbia. And get this, it turns out they've been doing this for 20 years and to 72 nations. China, and there's a military institute in China, in Xi'an, China, and they study every democracy, in the Western nation. And I'm sure they've got an expert for every one of 3,000 counties in America. And I'm sure that county, what county are we in here?
This is Blanco County.
Blanco County?
Yeah.
I'm sure that that there's some expert who knows more about Blanco County than Anyone you know.
On the Chinese payroll.
Well, there's a Blue Masonic Lodge in town, so that says everything.
Well, and they have been for 20 years altering who wins in the school board level, the police, the captains, every elected position, and moving up. And then they've just in the last 5 years got to the top. But that's so Chinese to take over, to overthrow the West like that without firing a shot.
Yeah, without firing a shot and without seemingly arousing any suspicion at all.
The nature of fifth generation warfare is you don't even know that you're under attack or who your enemy is. But it's so Chinese. For 2,500 years, they have believed that the greatest victory is to win without fighting. Mm-hmm. And that's what they've done. The goal was to overthrow our republic. They've been at it 20 years, but all across the West. So we bemoan what we see happening in Europe and this migration. Well, it just turns out that the politicians who are doing this are not truly getting elected by the people. They're getting elected, they're getting chosen from some people in Serbia, some Chinese military intelligence. So they've studied the West down to every nook and cranny, and they are bending the arc of the West so that it crashes into a brick wall. And this is all, it's not a theory anymore. And there's the people who really need to understand this understand it all now. And President Trump understands it in these terms, that this is, I believe that he understands it in these terms.